Welcome to Let's Go Live with Gigi Meyer, and I have Dr. Linda Ling, author also. And so if you'll introduce yourself, where we can find your books and what your handle is, where we can find you hanging out also.
Okay. I'm predominantly on Instagram at Linda Ling Writes, although I'm trying to use TikTok, not as well as you can, Gigi. It's at Linda Shuo Shu. Those are a couple of Chinese words, so Shuoshu. And the reason I chose those particular words is because Shuo Shu means storyteller.
In what language?
In Mandarin.
Okay, say that again.
In Mandarin.
Mandarin.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, though.
So those are where you can find me. I have a fantasy trilogy series which is completed. It's on Amazon and KU, and I also have a children's book.
Okay, so the name of the trilogy.
The trilogy is called Land of the Sun, and the children's book is called The Adventures of Tree Fairy.
Okay, and you have
and Gigi, as you've mentioned, I'm a doctor by day. I do not go by Linda Ling. Linda is my pen name. Oh, that's fine.
I've had it wrong this whole time. How many months have we known each other and I've had it wrong?
It's okay. It's okay. No, in fact, I find it strange when people DM me and they use my real name because it's not that difficult to find, right? And then so someone in our mutual comment group did that, and she used my real name. I was like, man, that's so weird.
That is.
Sometimes I don't know who I am anymore.
That is weird. I would be taken back too, but let me tell you, if I was a doctor, that would be plastered everywhere. I'd be like, you can call me doctor.
You can call me Linda. That's fine.
So, Dr. Linda. I feel like I should do this instead, doctor.
Okay.
But okay, so before we get into the fantasy and the children's, you're actually working outside those genres on a new project?
Yeah. I took a cue from a lot of Bookstagram stuff that I see from yourself even, and I wrote a romance novel last year, a month before NaNoWriMo, because I knew that I couldn't take the pressure of NaNoWriMo. And so I decided to do it on my own before that. And for some reason, I managed to finish the first draft within that month. It was pretty crappy because towards the end of October, I got COVID. So I wasn't sure what I was writing.
Oh my gosh. When they say you have a brain fog with COVID, it is no lie. I've had it 3 times. Booster.
You've had it 3 times. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm boosted and vaccinated. I did like all the things you're supposed to do. But my kids, sharing is caring, and they are super, super sharing.
I see. Well, yeah, me and my husband shared the virus. So
yeah. And the children did.
Well, I shared it with him. Yeah, so I know the feeling.
Yeah, NaNoWriMo is fierce. I dink around. Sometimes I do camp, which starts actually tomorrow. Right? No, 2 days. 2 days is Camp NaNoWriMo for April. I'm going to have like a little, I'm going to dabble in that a little bit. But NaNoWriMo in November, it is fierce. And I wrote the book that I have out now, Tomlin. I wrote and finished that in Nano. But
wow,
it's not for the faint of win.
So the advantage is that for some people, it really helps, drive them and push them along. But I operate on so many deadlines already, and in the past, in my more junior years, I had so many deadlines. So the idea of having to impose more deadlines on myself, even for writing, I can't take it.
Heck yeah, ma'am. I was thinking about you today. I was like, again, I was thinking about, doctor and all those years of dedication and schooling. And I'm sure the second someone says deadline, you're like,
yeah,
excuse me?
I'm like, been there, done that. No, thank you. I mean, I do have my own internal deadlines for myself, and I tend to finish things earlier than I expect anyway already, but I think that's just me
I
as so I don't need that, external stuff. And in fact, I find that when I feel too pressured and stressed, then I can't write properly.
I agree. So I'm trying to finish up a book. And I was thinking that today I went on, like a little walk before we came, or, to try and settle down that crazy thing over there. And I was like, is my ending going to be emotional enough? Is it going to wrap up all the ties? I don't like cliffhanger endings because I think they make people really angry. And so I had that same thought is like when we're under a deadline and when we have that pressure, how good is our story? For me, some people are amazing. They can write under pressure and it's like beautiful.
I have a feeling those people have a bit of ADHD, but don't take it from me.
Hold on, let me put my doctor, Linda. My doctor is
I can't,
ADHD.
I can't help it. So sorry, forgive me.
I love it. No, because you do. I mean, obviously, you're a doctor of mental health amongst many other things. And so, ooh, that's going to be hard not to put labels on people.
Sorry.
No, I don't have ADHD. I have people in my life that have it, and they're like super disciplined machines, or they're a hot mess. There's like no in between.
Yeah. Yeah, and you gotta love them for that. You gotta love the fact that they can hyper focus. That's their strength, I can't do that.
Oh, I can't either. One of them, he works out 18 times a week. It's crazy.
What?
What made you, okay, so that's what you're talking about. What made you decide to dabble in romance? So take us on the road.
Yeah.
That was last October.
Mhm.
Now we're coming up on April. So where is that story at? Where would you like it to be? Do you have a name, a cover reveal, etc.?
Yeah. So, okay, so answer that first question. What made me decide to write it was because I took a bit of a palate cleanser break from fantasy and decided to read romance because it's just easier to sink into. There's no world building that you have to follow.
Oh yeah.
And I read a few, and then I thought, there are some things that I want to write about that my fantasy stories just don't have a chance for me to voice out. So I decided to give it a go using a romance lens,
Hmm.
and
What would
I think
that
it worked. I don't want to spoil it, but it's stuff that I see in my practice. More
Oh,
more day-to-day stuff, like a little bit like being a caregiver, that sort of thing.
mm,
Yeah.
right, right.
So I decided that I decided to try and put it through a romance lens, and then I think I did a good job. My one and only beta reader, who is my harshest critic, my husband, thinks it's pretty good. So where the story is at now is I'm in the middle of querying it, but then I'm at the tail end of things. I think it's not going to work out, and I'm not going to waste my time because I've really only queried less than 20 people. So
Oh,
I'm
traditional
gonna aim
publish.
to, huh?
To traditional publish.
Yeah, to traditional publish, which at the rate I'm going, I'm just gonna give up on that. It's really a bit of a waste of time, honestly.
I heard, and I may have the number kind of wrong, but like that movie, I mean, that movie, well, they made it into a movie. The book, The Help, I don't know if you ever saw it. It's,
I
based in
think
the South. And so that book, because it's very racially charged, she went through like something like 79 or 70 query declines before that one smaller, like teeny tiny publisher picked it
yeah,
up. I was like,
yeah.
I don't know if I could survive that many rejection letters. So do you just like wallpaper the house with them, or what do you do with them?
I, I, I don't know. I mean, like it kind of feels like applying for a job that you know you can't get no matter what you do.
No matter how
Which,
qualified you are.
yeah, and which is strange, as a doctor, there's no like job rejection. They want you.
Oh, desperately.
Yeah, so which is why I'm sorry. I've been sensing that this is a little bit of a waste of time. I'm not going to put too much effort into it. I've already put effort into it, writing query letters, hook, pitch, synopsis, things like that. And now that I'm done, I mean, it's kind of helped me to refine how to tell people about my book, which is great. But in all likelihood, this is going to come out in the second half of the year. I just have to plan things like, yeah, like you said, cover review, cover design, first of all, get it edited and proofread, and then we're done.
Just that whole thing. No, I understand. So you're switching from traditional to indie. And I don't know. I say this now, but I find indie to be, I like the control. I like being able to control the story. I like to be able to control the cover, like all of it, right? I have a friend who I know who's traditionally published, and she would never go indie, but they do control her story and they do tell her to what to change. Like she had to rewrite the whole ending, and it was like kind of like the one of these like it's not necessary. It's what do you call women's fiction with a thread of romance, and they wanted her to beef up the romance and edge out a little bit of the fiction part. And I thought,
Hmm. Okay, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
And
I,
if
I
you
like that.
like the story you've written and told, that's
Yeah.
hard. That's a hard pill to swallow.
Mm,
And like
I
have a
agree.
harsh beta like your husband who gives you constructive criticism.
Yeah. He was like, I mean, he was like, wait a minute, this character had glasses and then she had LASIK. Can you just keep it straight? I'm like, I can't keep it straight. That's why I need people like you.
Oh, that's sweet. Look at Honey for a Good Read. So this is why I want to support indie authors, not mass publishing companies. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. So you said probably then fall, like a fall romance.
I have I have no idea because right now this book is competing with my fantasy prequel, and I'm I'm trying to figure out who comes. Oh, well, not who, which one comes first. But they feel like who's by now.
Okay, so is this the one that, okay, so you have Foraged, Surrendered. Is it in that one or is it brand new? Is it a fourth
Yeah.
book in that
Um,
series or a brand new series altogether?
Let me pull the book out. Okay, so this is book one of my series, and I'm working on a prequel for this one.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So it's book
that one's been,
four, but it comes before.
yeah,
Okay.
that's right. So it will come before, and uh, again, I don't want to give spoilers, but anyway, like I said, these two, my romance and my prequel, have been doing a lot of competition in my head. Like, give me time, give me space, look at me, talk to me.
Well, I love your post about the creative brain versus
I
like
know.
the Linda Ling brain and the creative brain and like the conflict right there.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's hilarious the number of times my creative brain has disturbed me when I least expected it. Um, one or two times when my creative brain has come through for me, which is so great. And then not too long ago, there was this new entity, right? The vampire editor that came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one I've been telling people, he's been a bit quiet. There's a very good reason. Again, okay, what I can tell you is it does have to do with my fantasy stuff. And no, not my fantasy stuff, sorry. Um, my paranormal stuff. That one been on the back burner, which is why he's been quiet.
Okay, wait. So you have your romance whip, you
Mhm.
have the prequel to Surrendered, and you have another, like a paranormal series?
Okay, so my paranormal series, if you can call it, that those were things that they're very old in the sense that I first started writing that story when I was 15, 16.
No way.
And in the past, I don't know how old am I? A couple of decades, it's gone through th three or four
Yeah.
rewrites to refine it and to make it better, to put it more into my voice instead of that angsty teenager that I remember. Yeah. Yeah, and the first draft is like, ugh.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Um,
I can only imagine. It's like info dump, or the dialogue is too immature, or some of your references are dated for that time. Yeah.
but I mean, for what it's worth, the reason why I started writing them was because there was something I had to get out, or because, as a teenager, you have a lot of emotional stuff that's going through your head, and what better way than to write than to turn to other ways of coping that aren't necessarily so healthy.
I totally agree. I mean, mental health, I feel like we're in a crisis, and as you know, because it is, obviously your livelihood. Um, I started writing because of a marriage, just to help process through very sad emotions and dark times. And it had nothing to do, and it's funny because technically I have 10 books written, but I don't know if I'll ever publish them. I don't know. It takes me back to a really sad time. And even
Mm-hmm.
though it's been many years being divorced and I'm, very happy, I can't go back to that darkness. I can't go back to reading it without eliciting the sadness and darkness that I was in at that time. So I completely understand what you're talking about, where writing could be cathartic.
Yeah, exactly. And I do tell people that I meet to try it out. I mean, not everyone I see looks like they could do it, especially some of the men I meet. They look at me like, right? I'm like, come on, give it a try.
Writing and reading, I'm convinced like men don't do. And when I come across someone who, reads, I have a couple guy friends that do, and I'm like, what? Like, tell me more.
Okay,
Like, what are you reading? Let's have this discussion.
that being said, nothing against the male
Not,
writer and reader friends I have on IG. It's just the proportion of you men are so small.
no, we are not male bashing for sure, but the romance industry, 80% of romance, and I almost think that number is 90, but they say 80% is women writing for women.
And that makes
Yeah,
sense. I mean, I would imagine that if you were in science fiction, for example, that would be different.
probably. Yeah, I think more male dominated.
Yeah, yeah. Where were we anyway? Yeah. So prequel and romance book, fighting for each other, and but right now I'm putting that romance whip aside while waiting for all the query deadlines to pass, and finishing rewriting my fantasy prequel after I got pretty good feedback earlier this year on how it sounded and what things could be improved. So that's been going slow, but going pretty well. I'm pretty happy with what I got so far, and my beta reader is excitedly waiting. She sent me a message and said, "Hey, did you say you wanted me a beta read like a month ago?" I'm like, yeah. Please give me a moment, or a month. Yeah.
Or, but let me ask you this. You already have the trilogy out, it's been out. What made you decide to go and write a prequel? Did you not really want to say goodbye to that cast of characters? Why?
There is one character from the entire trilogy, just one, that I truly didn't want to say goodbye to. And I wanted to write about, I'm not even going to say him or her, I'm just going to say
Them.
them. Them, yeah. And I couldn't say goodbye to that particular character. And that book is about that character's story.
But see,
Yeah.
that's beautiful because they do become real. And I think sometimes people who are not bookstagrammers or reviewers or bloggers or authors, they're outside the book community. They don't understand that. Like some of our favorite people that we read, we love. I mean, we root for them, we cry with them. And so if you're not in the book community, you're just like, what is that girl doing? Like they just don't get it. And you can't explain the magic that books can transform people and take you to this place with a cast of characters that you love, like they're your friends.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure you do that. I mean, I do the same thing. I've written myself into tears before. It doesn't always happen, but I can see it coming.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, either I stop now so that I don't look a mess for whatever I need to do next, or I just finish it because it's all in my head right now.
Well, my children, since I write dark romance, and of course there's, smegsy scenes in there, I had to ask, when I have a son, he'll never read. I mean, I can barely get him to read his homework and do that. So we're not in jeopardy there. But I do have a daughter, and so she's a teenager, and I said, let me just clarify, you're never going to read any of my books, right? Like, never. And she's like, what? No. I was like, excellent. And so now that I know that they will never write them, it's like, I mean, never read them. It's just like I write them all wild, whatever goes, the depth of emotion. Sometimes I'll laugh out loud, like I have the character that came out in this release. I mean, she is a no holds bar character. She does and says all the things that all of us want to. Like if you have that jerk that cuts you off, she's the first one to flip you off. I mean, she's awesome.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I saw that she lied.
Yeah. Honey, for a good read, what did you say? She lied. I think she's talking about my character. I'm not sure. You'll have to explain it to us.
Where was I? I was gonna say, if you write in a pen name, who knows what your daughter will read next time?
Well, she sees them all stacked up on my bookshelf, and so she's just like, when are they coming out? And what happens now is her friend.
She said she will read it. Look at the comments. She will love it.
Hunting for a good book. She lied. So she's talking about my daughter lying. She will read it and she will love it. Okay, so I'm going to let a little cat out of the bag. I'm going to do like a quick story time. When my dad, before he passed, he was sick. He was like the comeback kid. He's retired 3 times. He had a heart attack. Like everything that could go wrong with a human body did with my dad. But he always bounced back from it. So he was in the hospital. It's the most critical care. So I don't know. That's not IMU. I think there's even a higher level. You probably may know that.
I mean, there's different terms, so it doesn't sound good.
Critical of the most critical. It's code blue. People are running in and out. Only one person can be there at a time. And so he kept talking about what I now know as angels crossing over. So he kept, the medical community says, oh, well, he's just hallucinating. But I read a book about how they cross over and come back and cross over because, when the spirit goes over the first time, it's like too awe-inspiring and they race back to that, diseased or broken body. And so I wrote, CCU, that's what it's called. And so when I was sitting there, you sit there 9, 10, 12 hours, he'd be in and out. I wrote a book, I have a trilogy about angels and demons, totally paranormal and romance. And so my daughter's like, when you become a good enough writer, I'll read that trilogy. But you're not there.
I know, actually, it's a bit my own daughter. I recently did a buddy book review with her. She has trouble reading my stuff as well. I think it's because there's a bit of a mental hurdle. She knows mommy wrote it.
Yeah.
And she can't quite sink into it. But we did a buddy book review recently, and that was fun. I happened to read a book series last year that the Inheritance Games. So some young adult kind of.
I've seen it on TikTok.
Yeah, and I read it. Finished book 1 and 2, refused to go on to book 3. That was me. And then my daughter has been reading book 1, book 2, book 3, and shouting her comments the whole time. She says she doesn't like the books, but then somehow she gets very emotionally invested in them, and then has finished the trilogy. So I'm not sure what that's about.
Okay, in a way though, I love it, because if she gets that in depth in the reading, then she'll probably be a lifelong reader, and literacy is critical.
She is. She. I'm very sure she's a lifelong reader as well. So
Yeah.
so I just have all my other kids to sort out.
So let me ask you this: what got you started writing in the first place? Like you said, you have a family, you're a wife. I'm sure your husband would like to see you, from time to time. You're a doctor. You do important things all day long. What is writing? Why write?
I mean, I started when I was a teenager, isn't it? I had stuff I needed to get out of my chest, and I wrote a little bit more all the way through college. Once I graduated and started medical school, that's when things really changed. I couldn't write whether I wanted to or not.
There's
And
no
I was telling someone,
resources, there's no time for you to write, no brain power.
no, I was telling someone about this the other day. They wanna go to medical school, and they were worried what will happen. I said, yeah, the truth is, you're not gonna have time. You're gonna have very little. And but you know, writing is not something that you lose time and then you can't write. It's not like it's not like being a surgeon or being a race car driver. Those professions have a bit of a shelf life.
Yeah.
Writing doesn't. As long as you can, as long as you can put words down, you can come back to it. And that is what I found. I came back to it after a very long hiatus, and I'm better for it because I've accumulated years of new knowledge and new wisdom, new insights. I saw things differently from my younger self, and I have family. So yes, where do I find the time? But then at the same time, if I didn't have all of these things, where would I find the experience and the emotions to dwell into?
And I think it's balance, right? Like you said, this is kind of your safe space. You're not the doctor, you're not the mom, you're not the wife. It's just you.
Yeah,
It's you and the cast of characters in this beautiful world that you're building or have
yeah,
built.
exactly. And I mean, I once read something very encouraging on Facebook that just because you never publish anything doesn't mean you're not a writer or not an author in that sense, because it provides so much for an individual. I mean, of course, the beauty is being able to share your story, right? But part of that beauty is being able to put that piece of yourself into something that is outside of here.
I cannot remember. I agree with that. I can't remember I just read it the other day, and I don't know if it was Emily Dickens or Jane Austen, one of the two, either name, very proficient writer, was not famous or at all respected during their time. And it was only
Mhm.
when they passed on that the sister had found this treasure trove of writing and the brilliance came out.
Mm,
And so, to your point, where is the line between writer and author? And some people get really hung up on those terms. Like, if you're not
yeah,
published, you're not an author. I think, oh
yeah,
gosh, phooey on that.
I know. Yeah, I don't know where the hang up comes from actually.
I don't
I mean, look at my IG handle. It still says rights. I can't be bothered to change it.
It may not be available because everybody's on Instagram now.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter.
So, what do you find when you're writing? What are the story elements you look for in what you're reading and then want to incorporate in your writing?
So when I read, what do I look for my
Yeah,
writing?
because we tend to, so what I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, we tend to write like what we read.
Mm,
So like Dean Koontz, for example, he's very, very descriptive. There's tons of narrative, very little dialogue. Other writers really like sensory writing. It's, how she looks and feels and, everything that some people are challenged about that. Some people are great at dialogue. And so I think we tend to write like what we read.
yeah, I think I agree with that in the sense that earlier on I was doing that, and sometimes I unconsciously do that as well until I look at what I've written and I'm like, you know what? That's where the rewrite comes. That's where the painful rewrite comes in, so that more of my own voice comes out. Um, I Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, like if you don't read other good works, then you don't grow yourself. So when they say that a writer has to be a reader first, yeah, that's absolutely true. If I wasn't writing, I'd be reading anyway. So it doesn't matter. I've got a whole stack of books here.
Oh,
My phone now is sitting on a book and three magazines.
yeah, we're not going to talk about my TBR list. It is sky high, sky high. But I agree
We
with
can
you.
talk, we can talk about my pastel pink shelf though. Where is it? There it is.
That's so cute.
Lots of pink.
I love color-coded libraries. I know they're not popular, but I like them.
I can't color code because after a while I'll get annoyed. I'll be like, no, the spine is all wrong. I want this author to be all the books to be together,
Rearrange.
So even if I color
Okay.
code, yeah, even if if I color code, they won't stay color coded for long.
Okay, so what do you, well, like I said, what elements do you, so if you were to say you're heavy in one thing, I know fantasy is world building. The children's book is more for like illustrations. I know illustrations are important. So what are
Yeah.
elements that are important to you that you want to get covered when you're writing?
A lot of the times it depends on I don't think it's very story dependent. I mean, of course, when you have an entire story, you want to know what is the theme, what is the main thing that happens. But then when I get down to individual chunks, as a fantasy writer, sometimes you want to focus on world building,
Yeah.
and then sometimes you want to focus on dialogue and setting up for something, like a fight scene or something that's going to happen. So I try not to get too bogged down, especially with the info dumping. That's where, in fantasy, that's where the temptation is to info dump. And I've done that. I've caught myself doing it and had to, kind of rework it and say, okay, can we do that? Can we do that later? That can come out later. That kind of, it's hard. It's hard. I don't know why I write fantasy. It's such hard work.
Oh, I love fantasy. I read dark fantasy. I read high fantasy. And mad respect for fantasy writers because it's very textured, it's very descriptive, and just the word choices, and I love it. I According to my editor, I do drag in too much of that into the romance, and
Oh, okay.
but my goal for when I write romance, I write single POV and first person present tense because I want the reader to feel exactly like my character. Like you have stepped in, like you've stepped into their shoes. And so you're having to be conflicted. You're wondering if she's, like her decisions are your decisions. Would you do the same thing? My editor is like, stop with the like, she like glared or she ambled or she's like, just use say or said, and I'm like, she glinted, and she's like, stop doing all that. I can't do it. I can't do it. To me, it adds
I,
to
I,
the richness
I
of the
agree.
story.
I agree with you. My fantasy stuff is in the third person point of view, past tense. So like she said, she moved, that kind of thing. But then the romance whip that I wrote is in the first person present tense, and you can't use all these fancy, dialogue tags. It's she says or he says,
Hmm.
and it forces you to do things in a slightly different way. So that was interesting. So having to go from the point of view and the tense in my romance whip and then switch back to my fantasy stuff was a little bit difficult. I found like I couldn't get into the past tense for some reason. I don't know why. I had a bit of trouble for like 10 minutes.
I Hunting for a Good Time asked what is my favorite fantasy novel, and of course, like the queen of fantasy, Sarah Moss or Mass, and yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
how you know it, but I've read both her trilogy or sagas, I guess, because there's what, 8 in one of them or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, her description is phenomenal. And so I
Mhm.
tend to like the way she writes because, like you now write first person in romance, and that I and he and she gets old. And so when fantasy does, what I've noticed trying to break down to improve my writing craft, fantasy will say, they'll describe a thing. And so if you notice, it's not like I moved through the room. In fantasy, they'll be like the room reached out and its walls were like, I don't know, dripping with blood or what. that kind of thing. So what I noticed is, and so I'm trying to do more of that, take notes from the fantasy, so it's not I, he, she, they, them.
Yeah, yeah. I did the same thing. Sarah J. Maas is a recent favorite that I found too. The first time I read, I haven't read all her books.
Man, because you don't have
I haven't.
time. You don't have like 10 years to read the whole thing.
I haven't touched the Crescent City ones, but I've read the other two, and the A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I read those books the first time as a reader. So that was more, I just wanted the story. I just wanted to gobble everything up,
Oh, yeah.
But I did a second read through, and that one I put on my writer's lens. I was like, okay, this is how she described those staircase. This is these are the interesting dialogue tags that she used, even though I don't use it. And I pointed out, I think in one of my posts, that she likes to use the word purr a lot,
Her,
which is really
her.
funny. Yeah.
Well, I think, what am I
Um,
writing now? Rowan growls a lot. But I think
yeah, yeah.
he technically converts into an eagle, so that doesn't
No, no,
match. Like if he converted into a
no, not an
bear,
eagle. Is it a falcon or something like that? Yeah, one of
yeah,
those.
okay, but it's a bird.
The bird of prey. It's not just a bird. It's not a pigeon. It's not a.
I thought if he growls a lot, it'd be like a panther, like a bear. But no, he's a bird that growls.
I know. I showed my husband one of those lines, right? And he was like, if they purr you, they should see a doctor. Yeah, maybe.
I know. Um, I love her books, but yeah, I mean, they're very descriptive. There's tons of world building. I would find that incredibly daunting. Although the criticism I keep hearing from my editor is that Hunting for a Good Time, it's sexy when men growl in books. Heck yeah, but
Oh
if
yeah, but
you call us on the street, we're coming for you.
yeah, in real life it doesn't sound that great. They sound funny. They do.
That is the truth, but I love hers. But my my editor's criticism is that I get too verbose, and so what I try to do is, like you had said earlier, instead of info dumping, which is always tempting for every author I've talked to, is can this be something that is said in dialogue? Are we trying to communicate it through
Yeah,
two characters talking, or does she really have to keep it inside her head and get out that way?
yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. And it's not easy to do naturally, actually. Naturally. Actually, it's not easy to do because naturally the tendency is just to info dump because that's how your brain is operating. And then it's only when you go through edits that's when you fix all of these errors. I'm pretty sure, I mean, I'm looking at my whip now. I'm pretty sure I have a lot. He said, she said. I have a couple of extra growls where they're not supposed to be, but then I just put them as placeholders. And that's where my trusty, red pen is going to be, well, not literally on my screen, but later on.
Okay, so I have tried my best to move away from dialogue tags if I can. My developmental editor hates them, and so she's converted me, rightfully so, to action beats. And so I've been trying to do that, but sometimes you're like, I just want them to purr and growl, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Or to parry, to counter, to argue, to blah blah blah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I have let me think, my copyline editor hates everything other than say or said. And my development editor, she's like, get rid of it all. Never use a dialogue tag, use an action beat.
Never. I mean, I don't know.
And so
Yeah.
I, I know. So when I send it over, I'm like, I'm sorry. I can't not write it without these elements. Okay. They're required.
Well, that's why you have multiple pairs of eyes, right? I mean, everybody has their own opinion, but at the end of the day, because you are the indie author, your words earlier, you get control of everything. So if there's something you don't agree with, you actually can put it out and say, no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. And I do rely on my betas. So I've had 4 betas. They're fantastic ladies. Love them to pieces. And it's varying the feedbacks. I have one who she is brutal, brutal, and I love it. She'll be the first one. It's just pages of like, what? They don't do that. That doesn't make sense. You're going on too long. I love it. And then I have one who's like my hype girl. I loved every bit of it.
Oh.
So I think having those betas, to your point though, I had one who said with Tomlin, too many car scenes. I had one that said not enough car scenes. I had one, too much of the dog, too much of this. And so, yeah, so you're right. You're not going to please everybody all the time, but it really does help to just get another set of eyes to tell you, you know, does this make sense? Am I going down the wrong road? Is this subplot messed up? Should it come out all together?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, what is your favorite part of writing, and what is your least favorite part?
Okay, the least favorite part is easy to answer. Having to put my book out there and tell people about it.
Marketing.
Yes. Yeah. Although I would say that lately I've gotten into a better groove and I do start to have fun. Like when I post about creative brain, you know, that one I enjoy. I enjoy telling people this is what's going on up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marketing.
But it is,
I mean, obviously people have degrees in it, and there's several of the universities over here that are now teaching digital marketing and influencing. So, Hunting for a Good Read said marketing can be fun. Okay, so we need to hire her.
yeah. And may I say the key word is can? Whereas for me, writing is almost always fun. Except when I write myself into tears. And then even after that, when I stop crying, I think about it and I'm like, that felt good.
Well, yeah, no, because to me, what I hope is when you write an emotional scene, I hope if I'm crying, you're crying.
Yeah.
Then we know we've done it right. You know, you don't have really like any teachers to give you the A+. And so that's what reviews are. That's why they're so important, because you just want someone else in the world to get what you wrote. You know, you created this world, you created that cast of characters, you created all their character arc and the plot and all that. And the biggest compliment is when someone gets in your book and they're with you. Oh my gosh, there's nothing better. I mean, someone could tell you like, oh, you're pretty or this or that. You're like, no, have you read my book?
Yeah.
Do you love them? Do you love them like I love them?
Exactly. I think one of the recent best compliments I got was there was a reader who read book 2, Forged. This one.
Yeah, show us your cover. I love that.
So I know this is my favorite of the 3. So the feel of each book is a little bit different. This one is a little bit more coming of age. You know, the main character, she's exploring. She's doing something different from what she normally does.
Well, the yellow.
And then this one is a little bit more romancy, but there's not as much romance as a romance book. So I had one reader who read this book, and then she said she liked it a lot. And I said, oh, you know, I'm not working on my fantasy stuff right now. I'm gonna have a romance book coming out. And she's like, I'm gonna read it. When? Oh, that was so nice. She has no idea.
Is she your baby?
She doesn't know what the No, she isn't. And she has no idea what the title is. She has no idea what it's about. You know, I haven't said what it's about except what I told you. And she's like, I want to read it. I'm like, yay, I'm so happy.
That is so nice. See, that to me is it's the whole reason why we do it. You know, it's just the validation. Now, the same double-edged sword, you know, you get a bad review and you're just like, what? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so sweet. Hunting for a Good Read said, you are one of my auto-buy authors.
Yeah, that reader, yeah.
That's so sweet. No pressure.
Let me get my head sorted out first. Like I said, the two whips are still warring with each other for attention.
Yeah, I can't tell. There is, I have a writer friend. She is a machine. She'll write 6,000 to 7,000 words a day. She dictates into that dragon technology, and she has 3 different books going. So she's like two, and two every day. And I said, okay, well, are they in the same series? She's like, no, totally different. I'm like, how do you keep, because I'm going to say, okay, if they growled and purred in that one, everybody's growling and purring. Everybody.
It's gonna sound like a zoo everywhere.
That's my whole point. I don't know how she keeps it separate per project. It's fascinating.
Yeah, no, I can't do that. I mean, first of all, I don't have the time, right? And so I can only focus on one project at a time. So please don't ask me to go look at something else when I'm working on one thing. It's hard enough keeping track with all the stuff I have to do. I feel like I have ADHD and I have forgotten stuff that I normally wouldn't have.
Well, the thing the thing that's hard as a writer and forgetting stuff is that you got to tie up those loose ends. And that reader will come along and be like, you didn't answer this. And you're like, I forgot about that.
Yeah, or you know, the small things like recently, yeah, so I was going through my romance, right? And then I was like, you know, if she left this place and went to that place, she needs her bag, you know, she slept over and she has no bag now. And then and the thing is, I caught that before I went to sleep. My creative brain woke me up and said, you know, loophole. I'm like, okay, fine. I got up and I scribbled it down and went back to sleep.
Oh, that's me all the time. I was up at 5 in the morning because she had put her phone in her back pocket, but then she sat down. I'm like, well, she can't sit down on her phone. But yeah, there was an author I saw the other day. She said, I wrote this really smexy sex scene, and she said, apparently they're like octopuses, and they have all these extra hands on each other. Because she wrote too many hands. One hand was up here, one hand was down there, but then there was another hand on like the middle part.
And then you count, there ends up being 5 hands, and you're like, is there a third person there?
No. And she said, yeah, it wasn't a harem or reverse harem. But we all do that, right? We lose track of where hands are, purses are, you know, were they sitting, were they standing? Which is it?
Yeah, which is why when my husband gave me that comment about the glasses and then the LASIK, he was so harsh about it. He said, "Hey, you are the writer. You created this. Why can't you keep it straight?" I mean, how can I keep it straight? It's not why can't I keep it straight. It's how can I?
Do you do a book Bible? Do you do any kind of character sheets or?
Okay. No, I was like, I don't know what a book Bible is, but character sheets, yes, I do when I can't keep track, when I start losing track. For my romance one, I didn't need to. I just put in notes and then I wrote over the notes as I went along. My fantasy, I've got timelines. I've got like, okay, this name has been taken up, or these names with all starting with K, too many Ks, you know, take it out. I have charts that say, this kingdom has how many houses, that kingdom has how many houses, because I forgot how many. So yeah.
Okay, so George R.R. Martin, who wrote Game of Thrones, and then HBO could not wait around for him to write the rest of it, so they moved past him and wrote the rest, right?
Yep.
But I think he has an assistant, or I think he has like 2 assistants, because it's gotten so big and he's added so many extra characters. They said his cast of characters is literally 1,200, and he can't even keep it straight. And you know, if you've ever watched Game of Thrones or if you read him, you know, it's like we're talking today on this day, March 30th, but like 3 years ago, me and you met at a chance meeting, you know, and so it's all those little connections. So that's what slows him down, is because his cast of characters, the kingdoms, the backstory, the lands, the map, it's so complicated. He made it way too complicated.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, he can, right? He can afford to. He's so famous. People will gobble up his stuff.
George.
You know, I'm you know, middling little author trying to find my own piece of things. I can't afford to do that, and I don't want to. It becomes too much work for me too. You know, it's just me. You know, I don't have 2 PAs.
It's not fun. I don't
Yeah.
want to write something complicated. I already am unique in how I write. When I talk to someone, they're like, "You're not a popcorn romance author." Like get that cheap popcorn. It'll fill it is calories, but it doesn't fill you up. And I said, "No, I want something kind of that lingers with you, that's thought provoking." I said, "I don't want people to walk away and then like, okay, on the next one," which a lot of readers are. Romance readers are voracious. But I
Mm.
just like books that kind of linger and you have to marinate with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say even though I have read romance and I've written a romance, I'm not actually by default a romance reader, sorry, a romance reader or author. I recently again I read a very well-known romance author's book, and man, when I like halfway through the book, I was like, what is this? It didn't feel good. I'm like, and then I finished it. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Romance has a really wide umbrella. I mean, some of it is
hmm,
literally porn on pages, and that's fine. There's Amish romance. There's merman,
really?
like merman romance. I
Oh
mean,
yes, yes, yes.
it's
I've
the
seen
gamut.
those. Yeah. Yeah. No, the romance I wrote is very traditional, girl and boy meet and stuff happens.
Is it like a rom-com? What do you consider like a rom-com?
Okay, I started out trying to write it as a rom-com, but I realized I'm not very funny with humor. I try, I'm not very good at it. And so I was like, okay, it's somewhere between a rom-com and a contemporary
Yeah.
romance. And okay, what else I can say is that it takes place in Singapore where I am. And the reason why I did that is because I'm here. I'm from here, even though I've lived in the US before. This is my home. And when I mentioned to the writer community Singapore, the first book they think of is Crazy Rich Asians.
Oh, right.
And yeah, so and I wanted to capture the feel of that, but then written from the point of view of a woman and not so crazy rich because that's not really how the country is.
But that's what I think would be really appealing and such a good marketing piece because, okay, from the outside looking in, I've never been to Singapore, I've never been there. But we see all the high rises and all, it seems so glitzy and glamorous. Forget Crazy Rich Asians. You just turn it on and it looks like it's very wealthy, very metropolitan, very sophisticated. So, my gosh, you could spin that both ways. If your book falls into that category, your whole marketing is really glitzy and glamour. If it doesn't, maybe it's the more seedy side. But I think having it set in Singapore sets you apart because really, honestly, no one's writing in that for that country, that setting. What an advantage.
I feel that the publishers here are looking for more cultural stuff. Sorry, I don't do cultural.
What do you mean cultural? What does that mean?
So like a little bit of heritage, more heritage, what it's like to be a minority here, type of stuff. Well, okay, no, let me rephrase that. It's hard to say. They want more historical books that look into the history of the country and the region.
I
Because
get
Southeast Asia has a very unique history in the sense that it's a melting pot of cultures and races. A lot of people migrated here from different countries. It's pretty much like the U.S. and we've balanced all the different histories and racial groups in a way that is different from the U.S. I mean, I know race politics is a big thing over there, but here it's big in its own way, but not quite the same. People do get along in I feel in a different and better way. Yeah. So publishers here want to look at one writers who write about that stuff, whereas I'm just writing a simple story about a girl and a guy meeting here.
you that's really fascinating because I can see why they would want that. Because if you've created a country that's beautifully unique and you're proud of it, of course you want to showcase it. You're right. America and the politics and climate right now is very divisive. I was talking to a friend the other day and I said, you know, Reaganomics, 40 years ago, the US, you would say, oh, it was just across the aisle. I don't even think we have an aisle anymore between our two parties. It's just like the Grand Canyon, And so it is tricky to write in this climate. And I can understand why they'd want you to write and highlight that, but it is also a lot of responsibility on you.
Yeah, and I don't think I need to. I do want to write. I did want to write something that is different from Crazy Rich Asians, but you can see where I'm coming from. I mean, you talked about how it looks metropolitan and very glitzy. I still wanted to capture that, but without things being so outrageous.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, we have very ordinary day-to-day people here who do not fly private jets and do not own hotels, things like that.
Wait,
but
you're not helicoptering to your hospital?
I wish I did. No. Yeah, I just wanted to capture a little bit more, something a little bit more realistic.
Yeah.
Without getting it too gritty and seedy. Because I believe there are other authors here who do that, and they do it better because they have that experience that I don't. I just wanted something that's a little bit more middle ground, and hopefully I've done that. But we'll see how it is when I publish it at the end of the year.
Will it be your only romance, or are you thinking that maybe it'll merge into a series or a connected series, or do you have any idea where it can go?
I wanted it to be standalone. I really, really wanted it to be standalone because this was just, I'm going to go and give it a try and then come back home to fantasy. Unfortunately, my creative brain wouldn't let me rest and actually have a sequel idea, which is like, I don't want to do this.
I kind of know what you're talking about because the very first book I put out ends, there was a finality to it. And a couple of I've had like 3 or 4 readers like, where's the sequel? Are you writing book 2? And I was like, there is no book 2. I mean, if they're dead, they should stay dead, but maybe they don't stay dead. Because in those soap operas, I don't know if y'all have soap operas over there, but we do. And like people come back from the dead all the time. Like there was this tragic boat fire, but all of a sudden they made it out because they dove underneath the fire.
The TV here I grew up with what's that one in that really long soap opera from the US?
There's one. Let's see. As the World Turns, General Hospital,
older one.
All My Children.
Nah, I can't remember, but yes, I know what you're talking about. We had one too. It was called Masters of the Sea. It's a pretty cool title. I think I should use that title somewhere.
Right. So what are the hardest scenes for you to write? You said the emotional ones.
Those are emotionally hard, but hard scenes, I don't know.
Young and the Restless, is that the one?
No.
Nope.
But I've heard of that one. It was something else. If you tell me the name, I will say yes. But yeah, to answer your question about what are the hardest scenes to write, sometimes I can't predict, but I can feel it coming. Like, yeah, but sometimes I can't predict though. So I can't quite answer that question. Occasionally, what happens is I write and I'm like, I feel a bit stuck. I don't know how to move, and then usually what it requires me to do is mull over it, ruminate over it a little bit, and then I can figure out what I need to do next. So there was one time I got really stuck on more recently, I got really stuck on my romance whip. So my husband gave me some feedback and said, this needs to be improved. I didn't like the way you did that. And so when I was going through that feedback and trying to open up that scene better, I spent the whole day thinking about it. I mean, of course, when my patients came to me, I focus on them. But the rest of the time, I was just like, man, how do I get out of this? And then finally, by the end of the day, my creative brain came through and she was like, just do this. You forgot about these two. Write the scene for them. I was like, yay!
It does. We can write ourselves into a dead end, and then you have to go back and figure out, like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
the hardest one to do. So we're at 8 o'clock, or we have at an hour. Do you have a time for a few more questions, or do you need to get off?
I have a little bit of time.
Okay.
You have your rapid fire questions, something like
I
that?
do have rapid fire because those are fun and everybody likes them. Okay, so paperback or e-reader?
E-reader, because I want to have it everywhere I go.
Take it on the go with you. I like that. Plotting or pantsing?
Plotting, although pantsing is fun.
How big is your plot? Like, do you have like the whole thing, or do you have like a rough outline and then leave some room for the magic?
Rough outline and leave room, for sure.
All right. First person or third person? We talked about that. If you want to say.
My preference is still third person.
So fantasy is third person past, romance is first person present.
Yeah. Paranormal, a couple of my characters are primarily first person past
Okay.
because they're talking about their past.
Ah. Plot driven or character driven?
Both. Can't write a good story without both, right? If it's just character driven, that means there's no plot, and that means your story didn't go anywhere.
Or some people come up with the whole character and then that drives the story, while others have the whole plot and then their character emerges.
I think I'm more that. There is a plot, and then the character emerges around that.
The nuances. All right. Writing alone or writing with a partner or group? Writing
Alone, please. Alone, please. No pressure. I don't like pressure.
Okay, you said you outline. So the question was outline or discovery writing. You said you outline.
Mhm.
Writing in silence or writing with music?
Silence.
Does any of your books have a playlist?
Okay. Yes, sometimes I have a playlist just to get me in that, but I use the playlist for when I am not writing, like when I'm driving or when I'm out on a walk or exercising. Then that's where I imagine the scenes or characters, what they're doing, what they're saying.
Nice, because I do think music sets a mood.
Yeah.
And so if you're writing a fight scene, it could set a mood. If you're writing like a sad scene,
Yeah. So for my fantasy stuff, usually I use music that's very instrumental, so heavy on guitars or violin, without lyrics, because I don't need
well,
the lyrics distracting me.
Vivaldi. If you listen to Vivaldi Winter, it's very
Yeah.
it's very
So
dark. And
I have I have Vivaldi, but not Vivaldi himself. I have people who read, I don't know what you call it, redo Vivaldi.
yeah,
So like Vanessa May, David Garrett, I forgot the third fellow. Yeah.
I
But then
listen.
for my romance book, I had a lot of pop songs.
So you have like Taylor Swift. You have the Taylor Swift playlist.
No, I have a Taylor Swift with a Megan Trainor. I forgot who else is there, but the usual people who write pop romance songs, and then you just put in, and then you listen to the tune, you listen to the beat, you get a feel of it and the lyrics, things like that. So that's kind of fun.
No, it is fun. I know exactly what you're talking about because we have it's kind of a, for lack of a better word, my daughter calls it her like bad bee playlist, where it's all the like women empowerment and we hate men. And, because Megan Trainor has a lot of like we hate men. And then Taylor Swift has a lot of like men broke my heart.
I was listening with my daughter to one of Megan Trainor's songs called Mother. Have you heard that one?
No. I must not have.
I love that song. It goes, I am your mother, you listen to me.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Writing with a deadline or at your own pace. You answered this, but if you'll answer it again.
At my own pace. I already have an internal deadline.
Series or standalones.
For reading or writing?
Writing.
Series.
Yeah.
Series.
Except for the romance is a standalone.
Unfortunately, I have a series. I have a sequel idea for that, so I don't know if I'll ever get to it.
And then historical setting, present day, or future.
Oh, hmm. I want to say future because that's something I've never tried before. Yeah.
Well, I guess
So,
your romance is, present day. Your
yeah.
fantasy, though, is it really present day or is it just this imaginary time frame?
It's some imaginary, a little bit in the past type of timeline. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've done that, future, I've not really touched that. So that would be really interesting what I can come up with.
I find that would be fascinating, but I don't know if I have the like techie gadget knowledge
Yeah.
to write because there are some really oh gosh, I can't think of his name. It just went out of my head. There is this really proficient like sci-fi, but he does all future. Gosh, I can't think of his name. But the gadgets he comes up with, I would never think about in a million
Yeah.
years.
That's, that's the only hurdle I have. Well, I mean, it's a big hurdle. I'm part of this small little group of writers that does a short story contest every quarter. And the latest one was and the latest prompt was about AI versus mankind.
Ooh.
And I had an idea in my head. It was such a good idea. And I tried to write it and I couldn't because I just don't have the know-how how to get around all those tech terms. And I told them, sorry, I can't do it.
Okay, so one of those 10 novels that I have written, and gosh, this has been years and years ago, was it's a romance novel where she thinks, she's married, they have a child. She thinks he's 100%, human, but he's part cyborg. I know.
Okay,
I,
interesting.
I even have a cover. So like the cover is the eye, so it's just the
Yeah, yeah,
eye.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
within the eye, it's, blue and it has all this digital, like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
what is it? Like coding.
Mm, yeah. So so I can tell both of us, these terms don't really come very naturally.
I don't. Yeah, we're struggling. Well, that is all I have for you. And I adore you. I just love talking to
Oh,
you. So we need to do this again, closer to summer and catch up again and see what you have going on.